Okay, so picture this. It's Thanksgiving Eve, 1971. A man in a simple business suit calmly hijacks an airliner, gets a whole bunch of cash, and then just steps out the back of the plane into the night. He was never, ever seen again. This is the story of D.B. Cooper, a legend that starts on a Boeing 727 and ends somewhere in the vast empty sky. But this isn't just a story about a hijacking. It's really a story about a disappearing act. I mean, think about it. In an age before GPS and all the surveillance we have now, how does someone just leap from a jet at 10,000 feet over a remote wilderness and simply cease to exist? That's the real mystery we're diving into. To really get this, you have to understand that air travel back then was just a different world. No metal detectors, no routine ID checks. You could literally walk up to a counter, pay $20 in cash for a ticket, and get on a plane without anyone having a clue who you really were. And that's exactly what happened on Northwest Orient Flight 305. It was supposed to be a totally routine, short flight from Portland to Seattle. For the passengers and the crew, it was just another day, another trip before the holiday weekend. But on that flight was this quiet man, maybe in his mid-40s, who bought his one-way ticket under the name Dan Cooper. Here's a fun fact, though. The name D.B. Cooper that we all know, that was actually a mistake from an early media report. But boy, did that name stick. So he never actually arrived in Seattle with everyone else, because somewhere over the dark, rainy forests of the Pacific Northwest, after taking control of the plane, he disappeared. Just gone. And that's the central puzzle here. Not just that he did it, but how in the world did he manage to vanish without a trace? What makes this case so incredibly fascinating is the hijacking itself. This wasn't some loud, violent, chaotic scene. It was calm. It was methodical. It was weirdly businesslike. Yeah, this wasn't some frantic, desperate criminal. The flight crew later described him as polite and well-spoken. I mean, shortly after takeoff, he calmly ordered a bourbon and soda, paid for his drink, and lit up a cigarette. He just seemed like any other guy on a business trip. The whole crime didn't start with a big commotion. It started with a discreetly passed piece of paper. The move was so subtle that the flight attendant, Florence Schaffner, she actually thought he was trying to give her his phone number and just slipped it into her pocket without even looking at it. He had to lean over and say, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." The note was simple and terrifyingly direct. Then he cracked open his briefcase just enough for her to see a mess of wires and red sticks. And that was it. That's all it took. The hijacking was on. His demands were incredibly specific, which tells you he had really thought this through. He wanted the ransom, of course, but he also asked for something very specific, 4 parachutes. Now, why 4? It was genius, really. Maybe to make them think he had an accomplice, or even more cleverly, to make sure they couldn't just give him a single sabotaged parachute. And the ransom? $200,000 in unmarked $20 bills. Now, that was a massive fortune in 1971. We're talking over $1.5 million in today's money. And it wasn't light either. That's a hefty 21 pounds of cash. So the authorities, they played along. The plane landed in Seattle, and the money and parachutes were delivered. And Cooper, ever the strange gentleman, allowed all the passengers and 2 flight attendants to get off the plane. But he wasn't done, not even close. He kept the flight crew and ordered the plane to take off again, this time with a new destination, Mexico City. And this right here, this is the moment that became legend. The plane was flying low and slow, exactly as he'd instructed. Cooper lowered the plane's rear air stairs, a feature that was unique to the 727. And then, with all that money strapped to his body, he just stepped out into the freezing 200-mile-per-hour wind and vanished into the night. The hijacking itself was over, but the mystery? Oh, that was just getting started. Cooper was gone, and his crazy disappearance kicked off one of the longest, most exhaustive, and in the end, most frustrating manhunts in the entire history of the FBI. So the search began almost immediately. For 18 days, the FBI and military personnel combed through those dense, rugged forests right below the flight path. And what did they find? Absolutely nothing. No body, no parachute, not even a single dollar bill from the ransom. Zilch. And we're not talking about a search that lasted a few weeks. The FBI officially kept the D.B. Cooper case open and active for an incredible 45 years. Can you imagine? 45 years. 60 full volumes of case files before they finally had to suspend the active investigation in 2016. Over all those decades, the FBI looked into more than 800 suspects. They investigated experienced paratroopers, angry airline employees. They even had a few guys make deathbed confessions. But in the end, none of them could be definitively tied to the crime. Every single lead just went cold. So with no body and really no solid answers, all we're left with are theories. And they pretty much boil down to two fundamental and totally opposite possibilities about what happened to D.B. Cooper after he took that leap of faith. So, which is it? Was he this bold but ultimately clueless amateur who fatally miscalculated the dangers of jumping out of a plane at night in a business suit into a freezing wilderness? Or was he a seasoned expert, a master of his craft who planned out every single detail and pulled off the perfect crime? Because after all the years, all the suspects, and all the theories, there's one single undeniable fact that remains. The man known as D.B. Cooper has never been found. Not dead, not alive. He simply and completely ceased to exist. You know, it's been said that after all the searching, all the investigating, and all the theorizing, the truth of his fate is just locked away. The sky, it seems, never told his secret. And that's the question that keeps this whole legend alive, isn't it? What does it say about us that we're still so captivated by this story? Was this the work of a criminal mastermind who escaped into a new life? Or was it just a man whose epic gamble ended the very moment he jumped? The answer, it seems, remains his alone, lost somewhere to the night sky.